As the West scrambled 2 weeks ago to head off Russian President Vladimir Putin's now full-blown invasion of Ukraine, classified intelligence obtained by the New York Times shows that Chinese officials were aware of Putin's ambitions. They asked him to wait to strike until they were finished hosting the Olympic Games. Retired Marine Colonel Mark Cancian is with me now. He's a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Good morning to you, Colonel.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. First off, were you surprised by this news?
Not really. There's been a lot of talk about the Russians delaying until after the Olympics for a variety of reasons. It's not surprising that the Chinese called them up. The Chinese and the Russians have had a relationship, partly military, economic, so that the fact that they were coordinating is not a surprise. It is disturbing that the Chinese did not take a stronger view to stop the invasion, but it's not surprising.
Would there be some reason why Vladimir Putin was willing to appease the Chinese by saying, oh, sure, no problem, I'll wait until after the Games?
Well, the Russians and the Chinese have close relationships. Some of it's military, some of it's economics. And I think Putin also recognized that launching an invasion during the Games would just bring extra attention. He had hoped that this thing would be opened over very quickly and not generate a lot of news, a lot of attention. So doing it after the Games was also in his interest.
China and Russia have a long-standing relationship, as you just touched on. What does this mean for the two countries' nuclear capabilities, especially in light of the fact that Putin was recently talking about his nuclear power?
Well, the Russians and Putin have been rattling their nuclear saber for a little while here. You may remember that before the invasion, about a week before, they held some nuclear exercises. And then in Putin's pre-war speech, he threatened NATO with nuclear forces if they intervened. Now he has talked about putting his nuclear forces on alert, although it's not clear exactly what that means. The Chinese, have their own separate nuclear capability. They're actually greatly expanding that nuclear capability, although that's not related to the conflict here or to Russia.
One more question for you. Antony Blinken, Secretary of State from the U.S., he's visiting Europe today. He's expected to visit NATO nations. What can we expect from his visit? Obviously, there is a lot to speak of when it comes to U.S. forces there on the ground in nations surrounding Ukraine.
I think this is part of President Biden's effort to produce a united diplomatic front that's been quite successful. NATO has been quite unified. Even countries that were feared to be maybe a little wobbly. I think Blinken's going to shore that up with some joint statements. They might move some more forces into Eastern Europe, although I think they want to be very careful about being provocative and causing some Russian reaction. There are already a good deal of troops there. They could be talking about some follow-on actions if the Russians do something that's unexpected, but I don't expect a big announcement coming out of the visit.
You're a former Marine Colonel. What would be your biggest concern right now for U.S. troops and the world right now, frankly, with what's going on between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, of course, our hearts go out to the Ukrainians, and we support their resistance. It's really quite admirable. We do worry about the conflict spilling over into Eastern Europe, either by the Russians or by the United States and NATO being tempted to intervene. I've heard a lot of suggestions about a no-fly zone. I mean, it sounds good, but it would really entail a conflict with Russia. I think that would be extremely dangerous. I think what the United States and NATO are doing, sending supplies, increasing sanctions, and diplomatic pressure makes a lot of sense.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.